3.
Yummy like a gummy bear.
It's the internet. You're busy. Let's do this for June 24th, 2024. For the next hour or so, let me help you sort through the world of gaming on Game Best Mornings Live with me, Jeff Grubb. Today, is Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree too difficult to be good? But first, please join me in welcoming today's co-host to Game Best Mornings. It's Tom Caswell, everybody. Tom, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Happy to be here. Excited to get stuck into the messy news.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. It's things are definitely slowing down in terms of news and announcements and all that stuff. We got past the summer game season. Yes, I thank God. You're right. It's like nice to be like, okay, of course I'm playing Shadow of the Erdtree, but there's other stuff I wanted to catch up on. Maybe I'll have a chance. We'll see how long this breather really lasts. But it certainly feels like what happened is everyone got their stuff ready for Key 3 and the Nintendo Direct or whatever. And now we're past that, and everyone else in the industry is going on summer vacation. Everyone else is leaving to go do stuff. So, yeah, not a ton of news, but we got plenty to talk about. We'll get in there and find the nuggets for y'all. But yeah, how are you feeling about it? Are you going to plan to take any time off? I'm going up north in Michigan for July 4th week, and I'm looking forward to that. We're going to go swimming in Lake Michigan and all this stuff. How about you? You got any plans for the summer?
Definitely some plans for later in the summer. I'll be at San Diego Comic-Con in July for work. There will be fun things.
San Diego's great. I like San Diego a lot.
I think some of the Giant Bomb crew will be there.
I think I keep I don't know if he knows about it, but people keep saying Jan's supposed to be there. So
Jan is on the list.
Okay,
so, yeah, he might not know about it, but he is. Management certainly thinks he's going.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll be at San Diego Comic-Con in July. That'll be fun. Me and the boys are planning a lads retreat. I think is going to happen. So me and my crew are going to try and get away. I had a big trip with my fiance earlier this year, so I don't think I have any kind of like big vacation things. Honestly, getting gaming in, man. You know, just getting those. Just now that we have a lull, I can finally play all the games. But I'm currently knee deep. Talk about a mess. Knee deep in Destiny. So much so that I haven't really been getting to Elden Ring at all.
It seems like the Destiny fans are in the we're happy phase of like the up and down relationship that they have with Destiny.
We're in the happy phase for sure. The game has literally never been better, in my opinion, by a long shot. I think that they have created, in my mind, aside from something like Helldivers that's doing something pretty unique with live service, I think they've created like the perfect version of this game, or near perfect version of this game for the most part. And yeah, so I just every time I think about like what I want to play, I just want to do some Destiny. So
yeah, I hope it's gonna all work out for that game in that studio. It seemed like, you know, for years there, at least for several months, it was like, man, we don't know, this next thing has to hit. It seems like it's hitting. So
it's hitting.
They did they lived up to their side of the bargain, right? Now it's like, okay, Sony
eventually.
Eventually, exactly. Now Sony needs to just like, okay, this team really can do that magical thing. What do you want next from Destiny? I know it's like you're enjoying it right now, so you don't necessarily have to think about the future. But do you want them to like maybe take a breather and focus on Marathon, or you're like, well, let's go with Destiny 3? Where are you at with all this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for Marathon for sure. I think that'll be just to get something new from that team. I think that they are bar none the best best first-person shooter designers around. I think even at its worst, Destiny 2 still felt fundamentally just fun to shoot things, and that's why. So I think even when the live service aspect of it has been kind of lackluster, the shooting is just so satisfying. So I'm excited to see them do something different. That being said, I do want to get Destiny 3 sooner rather than later. I do think we need Destiny 3 based on what Destiny 2 is.
Yeah.
It's still so obtuse. It's so dense. One of my friends who now we're playing all the time, he's super into it. When I was trying to get him back into it, leading up into final shape, they had this new mode called Onslaught, which is like a horde mode essentially. So I was like, great, this will be a great showcase for him to just jump in because it's just shooting stuff, right? We're just fighting against waves of enemies. Trying to get him into that, trying to figure out what missions he needed to do to access it,
right?
What things he needed to buy, right? Because the expansions and all of this stuff, like certain things are still gated behind paid content. Like we literally like spent an hour almost trying to figure out how to get him to that place. And I was really just trying to speed run him. Like, let's get in, let's jump in. Kind of like in Fortnite, I think that I feel like Destiny 3 needs to build a game where you can jump in and you can play immediately, instead of like being bombarded with so much stuff. Once you figure it out, and once you kind of get used to all of its little different nuances, it's a great time. But that barrier to entry is so high, and I think like they need to build Destiny 3 just to resolve that issue.
Yeah,
like the game can almost be the same thing, but if you can just make it like way more approachable, like that needs to be what the game is. So I want both. I know I'm being a little selfish. I don't know how possible this is, but I think Destiny needs to have a major transformation, and I also think that they should get Marathon as fast as possible. Sorry, Bungie devs.
Yeah,
don't crunch. Please don't crunch.
For games like that are that big, that go on for that long, that sort of like build on top of themselves. And we see it like the Call of Duty menu, just for like launching different Call of Duty games, how confusing and like and labyrinthine it gets over time. It's like so. And then like for Destiny, a lot of that is you have been with us since the beginning, and you stuck with us, so you fully understand its idiosyncrasies, and you drive with those, and you kind of appreciate it because you've learned all this stuff. It must be difficult for them to be like, okay, how do we keep some of that like you've invested as a player magic without being completely obtuse to new players, as you were saying? It's got to be a difficult thing to pull off. I do not envy the position that they are in with solving those problems. Not at all. My wife's out of town this week, so I got the kids with me. They're being good right now, but we just started. She just left, so I'm kind of waiting for it all to go to shit here in a little bit, and I'm gonna have a mess on my hands every time I'm trying to work. But
apt things to have to deal with on a show called Game Mess Morning.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I turned on SpongeBob SquarePants upstairs, so that's the babysitter today. All right. You know what? We should explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you are watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Mess Mornings, or find the RSS on giantbomb.com. You can also catch the show later with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess with Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree falls to mixed Steam rating. This is from Will Nelson at PC Games N. Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree has already dropped to a mixed Steam user review score as players cite PC performance issues and problems with From Software DLC's difficulty. With the expansion quickly becoming the best reviewed game of 2024 and even the highest rated RPG DLC of all time, many players are still running into issues with the Land of Shadow. Elden Ring has sold well over 20 million copies, while From Software releases have been big events for some time. The open world game is what made the Dark Souls makers formula truly mainstream. Shadow of the Erdtree is an extension of this newfound popularity, and even though the expansion has been a hit amongst players and critics alike, it's not all perfect. So yeah, so if you go to Steam right now, yeah, you can see it's like 61% positive, I believe, at last time I checked. And most people are citing the performance issues. That seems to be kind of universal across the board. People are having one issue or another. I was playing on Steam Deck. It was mostly working fine for me. It's Steam Deck, so I'm expecting 30 frames per second. So I lock it at 30 frames per second on the screen, and it does the frame tripling, which has a small effect on on stability, whatever. The thing that really matters, though, is it's been working fine for me, and except for in one instance where the controls just stopped responding, and apparently that is a common thing that people on Steam Deck are experiencing. So it's broken in some ways on the Steam Deck, where it ran really well from the beginning, and everyone else at the very least is experiencing some like latency, some input lag here or there even, and then hitching, things like that, where the screen will sort of like pause for microseconds here or there. But there seems to be quite a few problems that are really like holding the game down right now. But yeah, mixed reviews on Steam. I wasn't expecting that though, Tom. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, in terms of performance issues, I mean, I play on console. I do have a PC save, but man, I wish we just had the cross save was a universal thing across all games, because I'd be playing on there way more if I could just play my same character. But unfortunately, From Software has never been good with like a PC implementation and porting over to PC, and it seems that has just continued into Elden Ring and now Shadow of the Erdtree. So I totally get those complaints. Even on beefy rigs, this game just doesn't run like comparative to other highly optimized games, like something like Cyberpunk. Like those games just kind of run rings performance wise around From Software games typically. So I totally understand having performance issues, especially like you're playing on Steam Deck and your controls give out. Like is it verified?
I don't know if it's Steam Deck
I assume
verified.
So, because Elden
Ring
Ring
was
right. So I don't know if it
probably
changes things because it's a DLC. But, you know, if it's a verified game, if Steam's telling people like, hey, this works on your Steam Deck, and then you're having issues where your controls give out, you're in the middle of a boss fight like that, I might throw my Steam Deck against the wall if like I had a boss down to a sliver of health and the controls gave out. Totally get those. The difficulty thing is just so funny to me, because it's like, come on, guys, like this is their bread and butter, and like And I think something that expounds upon, if that's a word, I think it is.
Works for me.
Something that, it works for you. Something that exacerbates this issue is that Elden Ring was so popular that this is probably the most that From Software DLC is getting played
100%.
by other people, like by normies, right? Like Elden Ring really brought From Software to the mainstream. And so that mainstream popularity is now coming to the DLC, which are notoriously much more difficult than the main games.
Right.
That being said, there are tons of ways to make that a bit easier. In fact, you know, to kind of not pitch, but talk about some of the content we've got up on GameSpot. Like, we have a guide to show you where all the Scatter Tree blessings, or Scatter Tree fragments, I believe they're called, where those are located to boost your character. You know, and Elden Ring's great because it usually, you know, if you find something that's too difficult, just go do something else. So it's funny to me, especially with so much sentiment around, you know, like all of the people that, like, I mean, you know, Tam did the review. I know he was playing that game all weekend up to it. A lot of people on our team have played it, and these are people who I would say would not consider themselves good at these games, have made a substantial amount of progress, if not beaten this DLC. And so, you know, ultimately, I think this is just we live in such a reactionary time, especially in the gaming world. People, I don't think, take a moment to think about what they're saying,
right,
or what their actions are. And granted, you know, giving Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC mixed reviews on Steam, like, what is that ultimately going to do?
No.
The DLC is still going to sell very well. The game is already a major success. But that being said, you know, for maybe if a indie developer came out and wanted to build a Souls-like game, and people deemed it too hard, and immediately like created like, you know, this mixed review situation on Steam for that game, that would actually probably have an impact on that that developer. And so, I think it's definitely important to address the sentiment. I definitely think everyone needs to take a step back when it comes to doing things on the internet. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what people kind of expected. It's just so funny to see that. And I'm like, I just feel like every time a From Software thing comes out, we have this discussion about difficulty, and I'm just like, I'm so over it.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where when this was coming out, it's like we kind of knew it was going to be much more difficult. And then I've been hearing people it's not just in the reviews. A lot of people online are talking about man, this is actually very much more difficult than I was expecting. And I'm playing it. I'm like, maybe are you putting limiters on yourself, people? Are you are these the people that are like, well, I'm not going to summon one of my ashes, and I'm not going to use the little NPC golden summon that's right outside the door? And it's like, well, okay, you can do that, but it's in the game. They're kind of expecting you to do that. And so you're playing a more difficult version of the game than is even intended. And that's fine. That's awesome. In fact, I think that's really cool if that's for you. For me, I'm at a point with these games, Tom, where I still definitely get the dopamine, but the dopamine rush from beating an Elden Ring boss doesn't really compare to when I was doing speed running or something like that. Something that's this is real competition. This is actually difficult. This is going up against other human beings. And that is a whole other level of difficult than some little puzzle that a developer set up for you to overcome and figure out the patterns and stuff. I like that. I definitely still am enjoying myself, but I'm like, whatever. I'm more about, it's more about the adventure, seeing what's in this game. So when I get to, I think it's Rolana or whatever her name is, I am going to summon my mimic, and we're going to go in there together, and we're going to wreck her. And I beat her on my 5th try or whatever. And it's yeah, I'm moving on. This is about the same experience I had with base Elden Ring. So it hasn't really been my experience that this game is that much more difficult than the base game. I can imagine, though, maybe if you are someone who refuses to do any of those things and wants to just 1v1 all these bosses, maybe there is something that makes them more difficult. I guess the fact that they are two-shotting just about any character early on, that's fair. And I think a lot of people just aren't realizing that the Skidoo tree, I just say skadoosh every time, like Beetle from Wind Waker. Those fragments, I think people are just not putting 2 and 2 together, that they really should be out there trying to level up for the DLC before they're taking these things on.
Oh yeah,
and
there's a ton of them.
Yes.
I think our guide, which again has all of them. So go to GameSpot's YouTube channel if you want to find the Skadoo tree blessings very quickly. Dave Klein put together. It's an awesome, really quick guide. 20 minutes. All 50, but there's 50 of these things in the game. You definitely need to be picking them up. And that's the thing, is that, Elden Ring and From Software is really good at building a game, but particularly in Elden Ring, I think they're really good at building games that the whole kind of point of them in a lot of ways is to kind of figure out the path you need to take to get to overcome your goal. Like right now, I can't even start the DLC because I never beat Moog. I took care of Radahn, which you need to do, but I never beat Moog. And so right now I'm facing him, and I'm like, you know what? I feel like I need to boost I'm using my mimic in that boss fight. We're getting pretty far, but his second phase is a whole kind of deal. And so I was like, I think I need to get my mimic. I think I just need to boost him a couple of levels. Oh, I don't have the thing. Let me go online. Let me find out. Oh, I can find this thing in this area.
It's all there. Yep.
And now I'm in that area. And I think that I what I just really do appreciate about Elden Ring is that there's always something else to do. You couldn't necessarily. Yes. I remember playing Bloodborne, and this was an easy boss for a lot of people, but I found a lot of trouble with it. The beast, the blood-starved beast in Old Yharnam. I spent senior year of college a week, all day, trying to beat that guy. And there was no other. I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't go anywhere. There was it was pretty linear. Maybe there was something I could go see, but it was literally just you start at the bonfire. I walk through this path. I kill all the things on the way, and I get to the blood-starved beast, and I die, and I just have to do that over and over again. And Elden Ring, you don't have that problem. I guarantee that there is something else for you to do. If you're not ready for the DLC, it's not like there's a major gameplay overhaul happening. Yeah, there's new weapons and stuff, which I guess is like the big appeal, but I'm pretty sure you've got a lot of other stuff to do in the base game that can get you up to that. And even still, like I said, those Erdtree blessings, or fragments, whatever, you need to find them. In order to tackle this DLC.
Yeah, someone chat, but yeah, Skibbity Tree fragments. I will call them that from now on. The Skibbity Tree fragments, I think you can get up to level 8 without ever fighting the first mandatory boss on the pathway to beating the DLC. And once you're at level 4, you have a significant boost to your stats in the DLC. I'm at level 5 now, and I was at level 3 when I beat Roland. I think I was at level 2 when I beat the Lion. So, and again, I was using my ashes and whatever summons they would give me. So it's very possible. I beat the Lion on stream, and that one took me a little bit longer, but I was still getting my sea legs under me because you mentioned you had beaten Mog. I did, but then I started New Game Plus without remembering, so I downloaded a save file, and the save file had a character I just wasn't used to at all, and I'm mostly stuck with that character. I did put some skill points. I went back and respect, but I respected kind of the same stuff I was already doing with this character, so strength and faith. And now I'm like, okay, now that I fully understand kind of what's going on here and kind of realized, remembered some basic stuff, a lot is coming back to me. But really, I think what's happening is I am just going out of my way a little bit to find these Skibbity Tree fragments, and that is making the whole thing much, much more easy, I think. So people just didn't seem to fully realize what was going on here. I think the assumption was, I have a max level character, this should be easy for me, and that expectation was just wrong from the start.
Yeah, the DLC resets everything, as I think it should. I think it should provide a challenge to everyone. And, I see some comments in the chat that are talking about, talk about the price of the expansion, right? It costs money, you're jumping in, you're expecting I beat the first game, I should be able to tackle this, you're having a tough time. I think something that I particularly like about From Software games is that they evolve over time, or at least your relationship to them, your experience with them, the kind of I guarantee you in a couple of months' time, people are going to forget that anyone had a problem with the difficulty.
That's right.
In the DLC.
You're right. I
this
agree.
Is gonna this is a first weekend thing. We're about to condemn this DLC in the first weekend of its existence. I don't think any game really deserves that kind of again, immediate reactionary response, but especially a From Software game where what people view and experience Elden Ring as today, the base game, comparative to when it was at launch, is vastly different. Our core understanding of what Elden Ring was when it launched is pales in comparison to our understanding of it now. And I think that we'll see the same thing for the DLC. And it's that thing of a lot of people complained about how hard base Elden Ring was. Does anyone care about that now? Is anyone saying that now? I think that this, again, it all boils down to how reactionary we are as a culture. And, I think that, we need to address there's other issues and bigger things that need to be addressed, and we won't. And if we can, we won't necessarily find ourselves in this situation going forward. But the technical things I totally get. I do think From Software, if there's any way they can figure out how to better optimize their games on PC, that would be great.
Definitely.
But yeah, the difficulty thing, I just I'm sure that if I jump into, once I beat Moog and cross the threshold into the land of Shadow, I'm sure I'm gonna get my ass handed to me immediately. And you just gotta kind of roll with the punches, figure it out, and yeah. So.
Yeah, I am going to use that guide. I'm going to hop on there and find some more Skibbity Tree fragments. Last thing, someone did mention, and I glanced at this. I wasn't able to confirm 100%, but in English, it is the reviews are very positive, actually, for this. And someone mentioned it's if you sort by English, it's 80% positive. And if you sort by Chinese, it's actually 33% positive. And I definitely know there's a lot of cultural differences in how the people approach these games.
Sure.
And I wonder if it's like the From Software stuff hasn't had quite a hold in China as it has elsewhere, and they're sort of maybe learning the hard way, which is possible. And I've definitely been to several video game conferences with people that make games for China, and they're like, yeah, the expectations that the players have there is if they go in and they spend money, they expect to be like very powerful and to be able to take things on, and that's true for like multiplayer games, let alone single player games. But I think you're right that stuff will sort itself out over the next couple of weeks, and we'll come back and most people are like, no, yeah, this is I conquered that thing. It was no problem at all.
Gadu, I barely know her, is what people will be saying.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's interesting. I had no context for any of that, and yeah, I mean that's a whole other ball of wax. Right?
Exactly. Yes, I'd be interested, like someone who has insight to that region, like exactly what's happening there. But yeah, we'll see.
Sounds like a good op-ed for any journalist that's listening.
Yeah, get to work. Fucking stop wasting time, slacking off, listening to this show.
Us. Go write something.
Go write something. So I have something to talk about on this show. Jesus. All right. Up next, Nintendo won't reveal Mario and Luigi's new developer, but says, quote, original staff are involved. This is from Andy Robinson at VGC. Nintendo won't reveal who's developing its just-announced Mario and Luigi revival, but it claims that some of the series' original developers are involved. Mario & Luigi Brothership is the first new entry in the Mario & Luigi series in almost 9 years. One of the biggest questions from fans has been who is developing the game since the series' original developer Alpha Dream went bankrupt in 2019. Asked about who was making the game, a Nintendo rep told GameFile on Saturday, and that's Stephen Totillo's newsletter. Everyone should go subscribe to that. Some of the original developers who worked on the franchise are involved in the development of Mario & Luigi Brothership. For more information about the developers, please stay tuned to the game credits at release. An insane thing to say. That's crazy. Just fucking wait till the game's out before you know what's going on. The claim that the original staff are working on Brothership seemingly doesn't provide any significant hints at who is developing, since some key Alpha Dream developers already work at or with Nintendo. For example, Hiroyuki Kabuto, Alpha Dream's former development manager, joined Nintendo-owned Monolith Soft after his former employer's closure. Series director and producer Yoshihiko Maekawa recently supervised the Nintendo Switch remake of Mario RPG, and producer Akira Otani remains at Nintendo. That said, Tom, a lot of people are speculating that it's ILCA, which is the studio that did the Diamond and Pearl remakes recently. Because that apparently like about a dozen or so people who previously worked at Alpha Dream have gone to work at ILCA, and it seems like that the timing would also make sense for that. Some of these other teams that do host previous Alpha Dream employees seem like they might be busy. So that makes some sense to me. But Nintendo, very weird as always. Why are they like this?
Well, it's funny you talk about cultural differences between like Chinese gamers and Western gamers. Japanese studios operate very differently from Western ones. So there's that layer to it, cultural differences on the business side there. But then Nintendo is, I think, its own beast. I think primarily the naive might not be the word, but the kind of the answer that I think is generous to Nintendo is that Nintendo wants to be viewed as Nintendo. They don't want it's not like PlayStation where it's like PlayStation's happy with you understanding this is a Naughty Dog game, this is a Santa Monica game, this is Sucker Punch. Nintendo doesn't want you to think about their games like that. They want you to view everything that they publish as, even the stuff that is third party that they publish, right? Like, the mystery around the Pokemon company. Like, Nintendo wants you to think of Pokemon as a Nintendo game, but there's so many partners and other businesses and things involved in that. So they want, they have to steal the stamp of approval. The Nintendo stamp of approval that they've always had on things. they want things to be intrinsically tied there. So I think that that's an initial layer to it. I think the more insidious, if we want to call it that, side of this is that I think publishers and companies in general are becoming more gatekeepy and like more keeping their guard up in order to combat things such as leaks, to make sure that the narrative around their studios and their games is something that they can control and craft. And I think that is a part of it. Now, granted, it has become more and more of a news thing with, I think, Princess Peach Showtime, Super Mario RPG last year, I think, was the one to really kick this off, of people really inquiring, like, who the are making these games? And so, it does open up a well of criticism, and that's something that like a company has to like figure out and balance of like, okay, like how much rope do we have to give in order to satiate people, in order to like not have like prying eyes into what is going on in the business. And so I do think that there is probably like an insidious layer to it. But ultimately, like, to me, I just think it's so stupid that they choose to do this. I think that there are tons of, positive implications and benefits to Nintendo that they could have if people like understood the different teams and different studios that work on these games. I think it's something that really works for PlayStation. Naughty Dog as its own entity, like having that identity is I think very valuable for a company like PlayStation, and Nintendo could have that. I bet you I don't know, because I think that also, again, when you're talking about Japanese studios, especially at Nintendo, from everything that I've read, books that I've read about their history, interviews, once they're kind of set in their ways, it's very, very hard to kind of like change that course, raise issues against that narrative and have them heard. So they're probably like very stuck in like, no, we are Nintendo, we are one company.
Yep.
We have these studios, but like that doesn't matter. But I do think that there could be benefits for the company if they were, if we had more of that like PlayStation nature to it.
Yes.
So,
and they do take advantage of that sometimes, right? Where Eiji Aonuma is like, that becomes a Zelda series producer, and he's the face of that franchise. Now that they don't do that with the whole studio, and they don't.
But what's the name of the studio that makes?
Yes, it's
Tears
like
of the Kingdom.
It's like ERD3 or something like that. Yeah, I can't remember the names of all the teams and how they're split apart. But yes, they were called like entertainment and research development for a long time. Now they're called something else. But yeah, they just have numbers, and they never ever really mention those teams. They just put a producer name at the end of the game, and then they credit stuff in the credits, of course. But yeah. And there's no
I'll tell you this, if Brothership sells well and it becomes like the next Animal Crossing selling game, and like now everyone's buying Mario and Luigi, I'm sure Nintendo will find someone that they can prop up and be like, oh, the producer who you guys all like, he is attached to this. I'm sure if they can get an Eiji Aonuma on Mario and Luigi, they will. It's just funny with the whole but like the teams in general is just saying like being a complete smoke and mirrors. Yeah.
It's kind of like, I think the most positive interpretation of what Nintendo's doing here is they are like isolating developers from outside pressure when the game gets announced. So if a game shows off and fans are freaking out, they can't, like, most fans won't know exactly whose door to go slam on and who to like harass on Twitter. That's like the most positive interpretation. I don't really think that's what's happening here. I do think it's what everyone's saying, where maybe that factors in, but really what Nintendo wants is for it to feel like magic, to feel like it comes out of the Nintendo factory made by elves, and it just shows up. And I kind of see why they would want that, but it's not worth all this. Honestly, just saying, and it's being made by Ilka, is only going to reach a very small percentage of people. Just give the answer to the people who ask, and you could still behave this way, elsewhere, and make people think, yeah, that's just a Nintendo game. Most people do still think that across the board about any Nintendo game, even when they know it's like Pokemon's made by the Pokemon Company. People are like, that's a Nintendo game, right? Like you were saying. So, like they can pull that off regardless if we know or not. So it's just strange, and it feels like the video game business's worst impulses of hiding away the people that are actually doing the work and depowering them so that they cannot maybe eventually do something like ask for residuals, which I think is really the fundamental thing underlying all of these kinds of decisions. Is we want to de-emphasize the importance of the people making it and really emphasize the importance of the company, because we're the company and that's to our benefit. Right. So it just kind of leaves a bad taste in the mouth.
I mean, I will say this, I did a piece on Tears of the Kingdom last year for our Game of the Year coverage. We did like a individual video for each of the games that we gave a 10 out of 10 at GameSpot last year. And I did the Zelda one. And, I talked about how the magic of that game stems from the fact that you just have so many seasoned developers that a lot of other studios do not have the opportunity to tap into. Everyone that worked on everyone that worked on the original Legend of Zelda game has been involved in either Tears of the Kingdom or is still making games at Nintendo.
Yep.
Like everyone there is still making games at Nintendo.
That's right. That's how it works for Mario too, where like 4 of the 5 people that made Super Mario Brothers worked on Super Mario Brothers Wonder, which is amazing.
Right. And so so Nintendo clearly had, and if you look at like the actual data and numbers, like the turnover. What's the word?
Turnover. Yep.
The turnover at Nintendo is incredibly low. Like Japan as a whole is much better about turnover than like the West. And even Nintendo blows out like the national average in Japan. Like it's like, I think it was like for every 100 developers that gets a job at Nintendo, like 99 of them end up staying for like a long period of time. So there seems to be a lot of positive things about Nintendo and how they run it as a company.
Yeah,
but I do agree. Like, is there more that they could be giving? Everyone points to the Satoru Iwata quote where the thing he did where he like took his he was like, I'm taking a pay cut so we don't have to lay people off when the Wii U is floundering.
Right.
And everyone points to that as like, oh, wouldn't it be great to have this in the West? The whole deal is like during that period, Nintendo still let go of people, but in America, where they could get away with it because the laws here are not as strict. In Japan, you have to be in like dire straits. A company has to be like really going under, be able to prove that in order to like have mass layoffs. So I wonder if there are like some like legal loopholes and things like that are preventing them from being even more generous to their employees over there. That is interesting. Again, though, and it's all smoke and mirrors right now for the most part, so we will not really get to know or necessarily have that insight until they open up a little, and that's probably why they don't want to open up.
I think so, yeah. For people wondering, like, it's entertainment planning and development is what every Nintendo studio is called, and then there's a number. And like EPD1 is basically just oversee work without external studios to work on Kirby, Fire Emblem, Pokemon, things like that. EPD2 is the Mario and Luigi team that in the past they've worked with Alpha Dream. And like a lot of these teams are like EPD2 is a development studio. It's like actually it's like a group of producers, and then those producers go out and work with these external studios like Alpha Dream and now probably Ilka. Excuse me. EPD3 is the Zelda team. EPD4 is the Weird team. They worked on Game Builder Garage, Labo, Ring Fit Adventure, and Brain Age. EPD5 was Wii Sports, Splatoon, and Animal Crossing. 6 is the manages production for Metroid Prime, Paper Mario. Again, one of these teams that has producers that work with external studios. Paper Mario, Chibi Robo, Luigi's Mansion. EPD7 is Metroid, Rhythm Heaven, Tomodachi Life. EPD8 is Super Mario, like the 2D games, Captain Toad, I think those might be the 3D Super Marios, and then Captain Toad and NES Remix. EPD 9 is Mario Kart Arms, and then EPD 10 is Pikmin, New Super Mario Brothers, so the 2D Mario games, and then Super Mario Brothers Wonder, I believe. So that's how it breaks down, and now they're trying to expand to bring in more studios and things like that, as they mentioned recently.
And last thing I'll say on this, so we have a comment in the chat speaking about how like people know when Platinum is making a game, people know when Game Freak is making a game, right? Every Pokemon game is a Game Freak, or every mainline Pokemon game is a Game Freak game. I completely agree with that. I think those are two, studios in a specific position to stand out, and that's simply because of like how things have gone down with like Pokemon and things like Bayonetta, and they have the clout and ability to kind of rise above just the Nintendo branding. That being said, how many normies know that Game Freak is not a Nintendo studio?
Yeah.
How many normies understand that the Pokemon Company is a three-way partnership between Nintendo Creatures Inc. and the third one, and Game Freak?
Yeah.
Thank you. How many people understand that? Even I don't. When I try and research this stuff, you don't know the actual inner workings of any of it. And so, sure, the Pokemon ZA trailer literally just says Game Freak. That is Nintendo using that name, right? I'm sure if they thought to themselves or itself, Game Freak is not a useful brand. If Pokemon declined in any way, right? Or if the kind of fervor around it was not this kind of 10 out of 10 fever pitch that it has continuously maintained for the last quarter of a century. I bet you if there was a way for them to kind of distill the Game Freak name, have it be more identified with Nintendo would make that happen.
Yes, if they could pull it off, for sure. I think a big thing there. Like, yeah, Game Freak does own a third of the Pokemon Company, so they're in a really strong position. But yeah, if things were to decline, you're right, Nintendo probably would use its power to do exactly what it does with everything else and just say that is a Nintendo thing.
So, yep. Nintendo going to keep Nintendo in. This ain't going to change anytime soon. It's a dumb thing.
All right. Let's take a quick break when we get back. We'll speed run through some other headlines, everybody, right after this. All right, we are back, and let's hit this. Leaker Pyoro locks account after claiming their source works for Nintendo. Why would they do that? This is from Liam Doolin at Nintendo Life. Nintendo Direct information leaker Pyoro, who has been connected to multiple accurate Nintendo-related leaks over the last year, has apparently locked their Twitter account. This comes following the publication of a story by Bloomberg reporter Jason Schreier, where the leaker stated that their source works for Nintendo. I think they actually said Nintendo of Japan, which would be NCL. Following the story going live on Friday, Pyoro acted surprised that the information was being shared publicly after speaking to Schreier in a direct message. Schreier responded to this in a post on social media saying he made the terms pretty clear. Pyoro tweeted, "WTF, I didn't know they would include my responses in their report." That tweet has since been deleted. The Bloomberg report details a back-end theory doing the rounds online, which noted how Pyoro's previous leaks had all involved games that had web pages that were set to go live on Nintendo's website as soon as they were announced. And some people surmised that the leakers somehow had access to Nintendo's web backend. In the case of the latest direct broadcasts, Nintendo did not have any pre-seeded web pages to reveal new surprises ahead of schedule, and Pyoro supposedly didn't expect there to be many big announcements. Although the leaker has seemingly been clued up on multiple unannounced video game projects ahead of official reveals, they've claimed to not know exactly how their source obtains their information. Jason Schreier said, "I reached out to Pyoro to try to get clarity on this. Over direct messages, they told me that their source works for Nintendo of Japan, but I'm unsure how they obtain their information and that the back-end theory is a reasonable guess." There's no concrete evidence attached to Pyoro's claim that their source is employed at NCL. So it's like that could just be someone giving, Pyoro the runaround, not necessarily telling the truth there. Either way, though, it does seem pretty clear that whoever is leaking to Pyoro did have access to these web pages, because basically every single thing that Pyoro got right was always happening a couple days before the direct, and it was every single one people found evidence of, like, and then the webpage went up as soon as the direct happened, and anytime they didn't mention something, there was no webpage, at least not right away. So it's like, okay, that seems to line up. It's a weird one. A lot of leakers have been having their reckoning in the last couple of weeks. Midori had that thing happen to them as well, where it's like, oh, that person was lying about who they were, and it turned out to be another leaker who had been previously disgraced. Nintendo also seemed to be cracking down on this after the story of people using the YouTube backend to leak things. Nintendo probably did a quick look around and be like, okay, what are other sources that could cause the same thing? And then maybe they looked at their web pages and were like, okay, let's not do that this time and see what happens. And here we are. How are you feeling about all this? This is a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I'm fascinated by it. As someone who, again, is intrinsically trying to understand how a lot of these things work all the time. It's interesting. I do want to put a PSA out there. Anyone that's listening, if you talk to a journalist and you do not expressly get an understanding.
You can't just say off the record.
That understanding. You can't just say it cannot just be you saying off the record. The journalist has to agree to off the record. You both have to agree to it, and then anything that is spoken in that bubble is off the record. And if that was the case, which I know it is not, because Jason is the most experienced and when it comes to stuff like this in particular, best at it. I know that Jason didn't fuck up. But you both have to agree to it being off the record. If you don't, anything is up for grabs. So that's an important PSA to put out there for people. But yeah, when it comes to stuff like this, a lot of people, I think, when they think of like leakers and things, like there's someone there like hacking into the Nintendo mainframe and like finding surveillance footage of IGI Noma, like talking about to the kingdom, whatever it may be. Usually it's just like someone has access to something and they would think it would be fun if it was out there, so they share it with someone, channels in order to get it out. So it doesn't surprise me necessarily that something like this is just coming from someone that has access to it, is an employee, not to well, you know what? I'm not going to blow up someone's spot, but I'll just say when I see leaks sometimes and like things come out and it's from stuff that we know about, because like we have emails come in, right, saying like this is under embargo, this is under NDA.
Yes. Yeah.
Sometimes when I see that stuff leak online, I'm like, okay, someone who received that email,
and that's almost always what happens. Yes.
Like shared it with someone else, someone who shall not be named, and that person posts it online. And so that, it's always something like that.
Right.
Interesting to find out that it's as, the fix to it is as simple as not having like a back-end web page ready to go.
Yeah.
Like something as simple as that can like upend the entire leaking industry, for lack of a better term.
And it's the kind of thing where when for the last couple of years, as I've been getting information that has leaked to me about like what's going to be in a direct or like the Xbox showcase, like that Xbox showcase that just happened, the thing that happened during the E3 season, that was out there everywhere. A million people had every single announcement that was going to be in that thing. I had multiple people DMing me constantly, and no one leaked it because at a certain point, it's like, well, what's the point? People are going to see it in a couple days.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is the difference between knowing now and in a couple of days? And all of Pyoro's leaks were like that, where it was, in 2 days, here's what's going to happen on the direct. And so, okay. I mean, I listen, I'm not going to begrudge anyone doing their thing, whatever. Do it however you want. But I did not often see the point of those leaks. When we leak stuff on this show, when we talk about stuff, we're almost always we're trying to find a way, like, what does this mean? Why are these decisions getting made? How is this important? Not always. It's not 100%.
There's a value, and it's something that, funnily, Jason has spoken about himself. He's like, anytime, when they would do the Ubisoft Assassin's Creed leaks at Kotaku, they had a kind of almost like a list of reasons why that information was valuable to the public.
Yeah.
aside from just the fact that it was a leak from a big developer. And so, I do think, and I also do not bemoan anyone that's like, hey, like, like I'm able to like carve out a little bit of a influence from leaking this stuff. I have this information and I'm able to use it to my benefit. I get that impulse for sure. I don't bemoan anyone either, but yeah, I think that especially like in the position like you are in for particular, it makes sense, I think, to have some kind of like, well, is there any value to having this leak beyond just
right? Sometimes it's like
clout of it,
right? Sometimes it's like when announcing, oh, hey, a Nintendo Direct is coming. That's like that one's also kind of harmless because it's just information about when you're going to find stuff out, and like and it's like that. So it's like always a calculation of. Is this going to be like ruin anyone's marketing campaign? Probably not. This also kind of like alleviates people's concern about, hey, I'm like, I just want to know when stuff's going to be happening. Well, okay, here's a little bit. And the details at this point of what's going to be in a direct are sketchy at best. But even if I did know it all, here's the date when you're going to find out. What else do you really need to know what's in there? Because you're going to see it then. So, it's always a calculation. But these days, I was not seeing much value in what was happening with these recent leaks from Midori and Pyoro. And again, whatever, they could do their own thing. Except for don't out your sources. That's rough. Jason was on the up on all this stuff, but I don't know if someone had told me that, I don't know if I would be like, this person said they work for Nintendo of Japan. I could never. I'm so desperately afraid at all times of someone losing their job over fucking video games.
Yeah, no, 100%.
I could never do it, but hey, he's a journalist. This is the truth. He reported the truth. So
the amount of times
all on Pyoro. This is all on Pyoro.
The amount of times that I have, I would have been potentially able to alleviate some annoyances in my life by like not fully outing a source, but like I am very on stuff that I've worked on in the past that like has been an investigatory piece or something like that. I have been very protective of my sources to a point where it's been like almost detrimental to my own well-being and benefit. And I think honestly, like, I think that's what separates like actual journalists from leakers and like personalities and like YouTubers is like, you have to be willing to protect your sources, even if it might seem innocuous. It can have massive ramifications. And the moment you kind of open up, the problem is that there's so much, we're seeing it with I know we're not going to talk about it, but all the stuff around Dr. Disrespect this weekend. Now that the door has been opened, everyone is champing at the bit to get more information.
Yes.
And we have to be very careful, especially in that kind of situation. But even in more innocuous situations, once you open that door, it can go down some roads and like open some things. So yeah, it's don't out your sources like that. It's
a bad look. Yeah, and I didn't even think to include Dr. Disrespect thing. Allegedly sexting a minor is what was going on there. But it's that's all we know is like someone who worked at Twitch has now alleged that publicly 4 years after it happened, which is about the length of an average NDA. Could be a coincidence. I don't know. But alleged. Now you can't sue me, you dumb bitch.
I would recommend two things on that. If you are interested in that story, The Verge was able to get another Twitch employee to speak to it. So go find that Verge story. And then there's a great piece if you go support the guys at Aftermath.
Yes.
A lot of the former Kotaku and WAPO people. They have a great story on why that is only coming out now and why people that might have heard about the Dr. Disrespect stuff did not necessarily
feel great about talking about it.
Open up about talking about it. And it's a really concise piece about, again, the nuances and kind of do's and don'ts of journalism and why they happen and all this. And kind of, it does kind of tie in a little bit to what we're talking about with the Pyoro story. So those are what I recommend. I'm not going to get into it here. The Verge piece, the Aftermath piece, there's tons of stuff already out about it. Be careful with all that.
Slay McAwesome asks, is this doctor another leaker? It's like, no, he films leakers. He goes in the bathrooms and films them. So that's what sets him apart. Fucking weirdo. Yeah. Hey, all right. All right, let's hit these last two real quick. Sony has reportedly made cuts to the VR development team with only 2 titles currently planned. This is from Jordan Miller at VGC. Sony has reportedly cut investment in VR with only 2 titles in development in-house for its PlayStation VR headset. Yeah, they don't care about this thing anymore, right? That's just, it's that simple, right?
Yeah, I was hearing that, like, basically PlayStation was pressured by Sony to make another VR headset to satisfy Sony's other hardware thing. So I don't think their heart was ever in it from the jump. I mean, it's clear that their heart was never in it from the jump. And now it's very clear that it isn't. And it's a shame because I think pound for pound, it's probably the best VR headset on the market. As someone who
very good
uses it still, I play Walkabout Mini Golf. I think I've even mentioned that fucking game on this show before. I play Walkabout Mini Golf.
Is that multiplayer? We should play some Walkabout Mini Golf on the website.
Dude. Oh, yeah. Okay. 100%. They're getting a Wallace and Gromit.
I love Wallace and Gromit.
If you have a PSVR, I think it's actually free now through PS Plus. So if you have a PSVR 2 headset, it's on MetaQuest. This is, in my opinion, the killer app. It is so good. It is just a fun, honestly, the mini golf aspect of it is great, but just the ability to hang out with friends in this space is really good. It's really unfortunate because there's, I think, still so much potential. It might be niche, but I think that if they put in just a little bit more effort, they could have seen a bit more of a return on it. But I just don't think that there was any interest from the jump.
Yeah, I think to me, this is the PlayStation pattern of, they got the PSP and it gets a certain amount of support that is pretty impressive, actually, all things considered. And then they followed up with the Vita and it has less support because the first one didn't do quite what they thought. So they're going to be a little bit more conservative and it sort of dooms the Vita from the start. Same thing happened here. The PSVR didn't even have as much support as really the Vita. It ain't close, but not really even as much support as the Vita. But it didn't do. It did very well, but the games did not sell the way that they needed to make it make sense. So they were conservative on the support for PSVR 2, and here we are, where it's like they are just not investing in that thing in any real way. 2 games from the first party team. There's probably more stuff happening third party, but probably not that much. A lot of what happened with PSVR 1 was Sony going out and finding partners and giving them money. Doesn't seem like they're doing that either.
That's not happening.
And really the sort of the nail in the coffin was Astrobot gets announced, doesn't even have a VR mode, which that's not a complaint from me, but it's something I've noticed and a lot of other people did notice. And they're like, oh, this is like the premier franchise for PSVR 1. And it has nothing, it doesn't even mention VR. It's okay. That kind of tells us all we need to know.
Yeah. It's such a shame that they never ported Rescue Mission over to VR2 as well, because that to me is, a phenomenal game, a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. And I think that it's a testament to the fact that we're getting a fully fledged Astrobot game now that people are very excited about. I cannot believe the kind of engagement we have been seeing through our videos and coverage of it. People are excited for Astrobot. It's a testament to, I think, the potential. If you really give a damn about VR, you can make something that can ultimately lead to creating another massive mascot for PlayStation. It all started with that VR game, and so it's just a shame. But I understand the market's just not in that space, and the gaming market is just not in a place where they can necessarily take the risk to invest on this very, very niche product. And again, their heart just wasn't in it from the jump.
Definitely not.
I'm not surprised that we're here now.
A rumor that has been long going on, one that I've mentioned on this site or this show myself, but also here it is somewhere else, that Sony may be working on native PS3 backwards compatibility. This is from Adiz Gunnar at Game Rant. Sony could be working on a solution to make PlayStation 3 games natively playable on PS5 consoles, according to recent claims made by a reputable insider. Despite some of Sony's latest efforts to remedy the issue, the PS5's underwhelming backward compatibility has been a consistent point of criticism for the otherwise impressive current-gen consoles. It's been getting better. They're doing more with PS2. They should be doing more, but they are. PS3 has always been the one where, like, I think a lot of people assumed we just wouldn't get that because PS3 is weird. The cell architecture of the chip is strange and difficult to emulate. Now, emulation on PC's gotten to a pretty good point with PS3 in the last several years at this point, so that excuse doesn't really fly anymore, but the expectation of like, well, then Sony should make their own emulator for the PS3, that's asking a lot, but it's something that I've heard has been in the works for quite some time. I thought it was going to get revealed earlier this year when I first heard about it. That clearly didn't happen, but that doesn't mean it will never happen. Maybe it does. This is something I would like to see. The PS3 is the one where it's like, there are a couple of games there, specifically Metal Gear Solid 4, that's like just trapped on that system. It would be nice to see it given a chance to escape that. And the easiest way, in my mind, other than what Konami potentially putting it in the Metal Gear Solid Collection Volume 2, which probably will happen, but the easiest way really is a backward compatibility layer on the PS5 made by Sony so that it could just work on the PS3 or the PS5 if you put a disc in, or maybe you could buy it again or something like that. But we'll see. Is this something that you're craving that you think could happen?
I always dream of being someone who's like, yeah, I'm gonna jump back and play all these old games, and it just like rarely happens. So it's something that in theory I'm very happy about. I think it's important. I do think, like, from a preservation standpoint, being able to have these games playable in places, being preserved for players, is important for the culture of games versus like any kind of like, oh, I want to go back and play. I was so stoked for the Metal Gear Volume 1 bundle, right? And I just never got around to really dipping my toes in. So I know when Volume 2 comes out, I'm probably going to be the same. So as much as in my heart I would love to say, oh yeah, moment I can play Metal Gear Solid 4, personally, like from personal standpoint, my favorite Metal Gear, just because of like the time in my life it came out. Like, I was I was 16 when it came out. Like, I was like, oh, and the game just felt so good. So like I have a lot of personal love for MGS4 as well. And so yeah, personally, I would love to say, like, I'm so stoked to eventually maybe play this game on PS5. But I think I'm more excited about it from like a preservation standpoint and having just people having access to that.
Exactly.
And yeah, I agree with you. I never thought we'd see it. I really thought they were just going to relegate it to that cloud service and call it a day. But good on them. Good on them.
This is definitely preferred to that. The cloud is it's fine, but having native support sort of suggests a more long-term something that will be around even if those servers get shut down or whatever. If you don't want to subscribe, you just have the game, just work on the system you already have. That would be great. And just having access, I agree, that's awesome. Yeah. I look at it sort of like a Library of Alexandria at a certain point where it's like, if you could just play these games, you could see the history of the medium. That is really important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the other thing is once a company like officially comes out and it's like, we've built an emulation layer, in our system to do this thing, it opens up it makes it much easier for hobbyists and other people that already do these things to also do it themselves as well. So I guarantee that if the PS5 gets an emulation layer for PS3, you're going to see better PS3 emulation in other, like on PC through these apps and things like that people make. So yeah, it's great. It's a great. Will I personally take advantage of it? Probably not. But
sure. Hey, it's good. It's better that it's there than it's not. All right. Let's see here. I got the poll question from last week. Where do you want to buy Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection? I believe this. Let me refresh this. Make sure this is the right thing. There we go. There it is. Yes. Where do you want to buy Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection? 21% said PlayStation. 14% said Switch. 20% said PC. 14% said Xbox if I could, and then 32% said I'm not buying it. So On this poll at least, the same number of people say they would buy it on Xbox as Switch. I would be surprised to see it actually play out that way. Tom is but clearly there is enough people on there for it to make some sense, which I think makes it the suggestion that it's a return on investment thing. The reason that's probably happening is because the MT framework is not supported on Xbox, so it costs them more money to actually port it to Xbox in the first place, and that is the real issue that's holding it back, which is a bummer. It's a shame.
Interesting. This is one that I am personally going to, an old game that I'm going to jump back into and play. I love Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and it does have online, right?
Yes, and it has rollback netcode. Yes.
Okay, great, excellent. Thank you, Jesus. All those things are being implemented. I will play a ton of this.
Me too.
Absolutely.
I'm very much looking forward to this. And honestly, 2/3 of respondents saying I'm getting the game. Who cares where I'm getting it? Versus 32% say I'm not buying it. That is a huge response of people being like, yes, I am getting this game. Of course, it's self-selecting. 100%. Maybe people just didn't respond if they weren't going to get it, but there you go. All right, I got a new poll question. We'll get to that in a second. Tom, why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, what you have coming up, all that good stuff?
Yes, go find me at Great Britom on everything. GREATBRITOM. I'm still, unfortunately, mostly active on Twitter.
Yep, same, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. I actually have a personal project that I'm going to be launching very soon, so please do go follow me, because I do think if you like this show, there's going to be some things about that personal project you're going to like, an insight into gaming and all that. So please go check out my channels, keep an eye out for that. And then I'm on the Unranked podcast, which is a podcast I've been having for 8 years now. We've been going for a long time. Very giant bomb bunch of idiots getting together and talking about games and their personal lives and all the stupid things that we get up to. So go check out Unranked. We'd love to have you. And if you do go check it out, do join the Discord and drop in the Discord and say, hey, I'm here from Game Mess Morning, so I know that people are coming over. We have a great community in there. We spend a lot of time making sure that it's a fun, welcoming community for everyone. So we would love to have you. And that's me.
And if you share stuff on social, Tom's the reason it looks good.
Yes, I am the social overlord, social video overlord. We're doing a big initiative with putting out more breakouts for Giant Bomb. So go check those out.
All right, new poll question. How are you finding the difficulty of Shadow of the Erdtree? More difficult than base Elden Ring. About the same is on there twice. That'll be fun. We'll get a new poll up there in a second. Easier than base Elden Ring, and I'm not playing Shadow of the Erdtree. We'll get the results of this and talk about it on Game Mess Mornings on Giant Bomb on Wednesday. Speaking of Giant Bomb, on Tuesday, we have the Bombcast coming up as normal. We'll probably play more Shadow of the Erdtree on this website at some point between now and Wednesday. We'll fit that in there. Maybe I'll play it today. We'll see. I gotta double check some things, but I should be able to make that happen. And then later this week, no Blight Club. Dan is recovering. We'll probably do a Delight Club or something else fun. Thursday we'll have Voicemail Dump Truck back. Friday we'll have UPF. All the other stuff you can expect. We're gonna go figure out the whole week right now. All right, Tom, thank you so much for spending today talking with me about video games, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me, guys. Thank you for
anytime.
Yeah, good times. Good times.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.